Well, in this episode, we're going to talk about mass. But what's mass? Well, you already know the meaning. It's like amount of something, as you know, right? So, mass is a kind of family itself, right? It's a kind of a family. But how is it used, right? What uses does it have for us? Well, mass basically has three main functions. Number one, the first one is modeling complicated shells, and not just shells, anything, right? Any volume, right? It can be anything. Well, I remember once I was in a modeling session, I talked about it that said that if the WRFCs can't design something, we go for model in place, if you remember. I also mentioned something that the main body of the building cannot be designed with model in place because it had some problems. It's exactly the opposite here. When the WRFCs can't model something, well, it's difficult, and they form the main body of our building, we go for mass, in which there are some, options that we can model these things, right? So when we face these things, you would go for mass, right? And I insist again, when the things are too difficult, too complicated that cannot be modeled by WRFCs. In mass, exactly the opposite of model in place. We're only allowed to model the main body of the building, not for furniture or something. It's not useful for that because mass has not been designed for this. Actually, that's it, yeah. Now, we can say that the role that mass plays here is a form, right? The role that mass plays is a form. But what does it mean? For example, imagine, right? I model something very complicated. For example, my hand, right? I now have modeled this using mass, right? I cannot do it with roof, and I was not allowed to do it with modeling in place. So I designed this. Now we've got a roof. Now this roof will copy the form of this mass, and then we can remove the mass. And usually we don't remove it. Why? Because when we want to edit this, we have to edit our mass. So if the form of the mass changes, the form of the roof also changes. So by form, I mean that mass, receives a form, and then the roof or the wall will copy this form, and afterwards we can of course delete the mass. So we come to this conclusion that two things about mass don't matter when that thing on the top is placed. What's not important, one of them is the material, the other one is the thickness, because material is not seen. As you see, the roof or the wall is on it, so it doesn't matter. Basically, I can say that this is the most important function of mass, so that we can design, complicated things. The second function is designing the shells, right? For example, you see that we have a slime design which is repeated on the facade or on the roof even. But we can do this using mass too. We can actually design a pattern and then add it in our shell. And we will talk about this completely. Number three, it's kind of a connection, right? Basically, let's say a connection with other 3D softwares. You see, mass in Revit has a limited power. I mean, there are things that you can't model using mass, or it would be difficult to model them. In these kinds of situations, you can use other 3D softwares which, of course, the best one I can say would have to be Rhino. The best software that works with Revit in mass is Rhino, but it works with other softwares like Max, CAD, SketchUp, and so it works with all of them. But why do we say that Rhino is the best software for connecting with Revit? Because both of them work with NURBS systems. I mean, both Revit and Rhino work with this system. Now, I don't know how much information you have about NURBS, but you can look it up, Google it, and find out about it. Basically, I can say that NURBS are completely even shells. You see, these 5 letters stand for non-uniform rational BSB lines. And both Revit and Rhino work with this system. Now, anytime you want to design your shell in another software and then enter and import it into Revit, if that shell is curved, just work with Rhino. Just Rhino, okay? Because if you use Max and then import it to Revit, it turns it into pieces and it will not be good for you anymore. But if the shell is flat and broken like this, as you can see, you can use both, Max and Rhino, doesn't matter. And of course, SketchUp can be a good option because it's so simple. You can use it. And I will talk about these perfectly. So, in the first step, let me tell you how to model in mass. Let's actually try to model some complicated things that we haven't been able to design in the previous episodes. So let's open a mass file. As I said, mass is a kind of a family, and we've already learned how to open a family. We need to go to File, New, Family. This is the list of our families. Now we want to go for mass. So conceptual mass folder is here. We can open it. Just remember that you might not have this folder, because actually in some versions this folder has been deleted. So if you don't have it, you can receive it from us. You can contact with us and we'll give you this folder. Just open it and then go to metric mass. You need to select it, which is the basic file of designing mass. There is also a shortcut for reaching this. When you click on File and then click on New, here you've got conceptual mass. When you click on this, you directly are actually moved into this file. It does not matter much. So, the first thing that we want to learn together right now is the differences between the mass environment and project environment. So I open a project environment too. Remember that I'm working with 2019 Revit because it has some differences with 2018 and the previous Revits. I want you to be careful about it. So I go to 3D. I don't want the plan, so I close it. As you see, we have these headlines only in 2019. They didn't used to be like this before. Now we've got these two. One of them is mass, the other one is project. Which shortcut can I use to put them next to each other? That's right, WT. By using WT shortcut, I place them together, and now I want to compare them. Let me tell you something, right? In the 3D environment of the previous versions, you didn't used to see these levels. Well, the first difference is about level lines, as you see. Well, as you see in the 3D environment of mass, we can see the level lines, right? Therefore, you can draw the level lines right here because you can see them, you can draw them, you can design them. It's true that in the Project 3D environment in 2019 Revit, we can see the level line, but we cannot design them. As you see, level is off. But in the Mass 3D environment, actually you can see these level lines, and of course you can draw them. As you see, what I'm doing right now is drawing. With a single click, as you see, I can draw them. Right? Now, I want to maximize the mass environment. And as you see in 2019 version, this is a bit different. Here we've got tab views. When you click on it, you see that they become a bit bigger. You see, it's a bit different. So if you're still working with the previous versions, just consider this. Well, for managing the height of the level lines, what should we do for that? Well, each of the level lines you select, well, first of all, you see the name, and here you got a number, which is the height code of this level. I mean, the distance from 0, 0. And of course, we can see the distance from the top level and the base level. And in this way, you can manage the height. For example, I click on it and change it to 30. Or I click on this one to change the distance from the level below. In this way, I can change the height of the level lines, right? But for managing the name of the levels, as I said, right, as long as you don't select them, you don't see their name. So after you select them, you can see the name and then you can change it. Now, for example, I just add a TH. And as usual, the things we've talked about the previous session, there is a message that says, would you like to rename corresponding views to? And we click on yes. And here it, of course, says that it doesn't ask you this question anymore. Well, it's common to change the name in Project Browser too. So I don't know if you still want to see this message or not. If you remember, just don't. Remember that what we've learned so far are still there. For example, when you go to the elevation, you can change the name, you can change the level, and all the things, right, that used to happen in the project is still the same, and it still happens. Just the new ones are added. If you remember, when we copied the level lines, what will happen? Do you remember? You still definitely do. They would not be added to our project browser list. We should have gone to actually plan views, right? But in mass environment, well, we don't have that as, like that. I just have it right here. Floor plan, structural plan. So I click on floor plan and then select the desired levels. The next difference is in reference planes. Let me go to Mass 3D environment. Well, as you see in this environment, we can see the RPs. Again, when we can see, it means that we can draw them, but in the 3D environment of the project, we don't see the RPs, and we couldn't have drawn them. You see, it's off, it's inactivated. We couldn't have seen them, we couldn't have drawn them. But in mass, we're seeing them, therefore we can just draw them right here, right now. We can just pick a plane. As you see, it's not named plane, it's not named a reference plane, it's just plane. Remember that. Just the icon is plane. As you see, I can easily design it, and that's it. Again, obviously, you can also do it in plan. There's no limitation, it's just an option. It's an extra option for you to use, right? The third difference is setting work planes. It's so interesting, isn't it? You see, in the environment of the project, when we wanted to set a work plane, what should we have done? Actually, we should have, for example, we had drawn a reference plane. We should have clicked on set and then set a plane and then okay and blah blah. All right. But in the 3D environment of mass, it's so much more simple. All you gotta do is to select the reference plane and then set it. That's it. So if you just select it, it's set. I select it now, it's set, right? Pick line and I start drawing. So simple. I select this one, it's set. I pick reference plane. Sorry. Let me undo. I select this line and I start drawing. You see that? So in mass environment, if you just select, that reference plane will be set. The levels itself, the levels actually themselves are also set when they are selected. For example, you want to design something in this level, you can select it and then design anything you want or draw anything you want in here. You see that? I select it, it's set, and I design something in here. Again, it's also clear that except this, we can go to the right plan and draw it. Well, why would we do that? Because if we go to the plan, we can do it easier, right? But know that if you select the level lines in the 3D environment, they are set as well. But the next difference is in selecting the objects. This is also important, pay attention. Well, in mass environment, for example, I select my level 1 to set it. Pay attention, I pick line, design something, that's it. See, I draw, I let go, I draw, I let go, like that. So I design a shape. Or for example, let me also draw an open shape like that. So now I go to the environment of the project, pick a wall. As you see, I draw it. In that place, in that environment, I used line. Here I use wall. Now, answer to my question. If we are about to, right? If we are about to select all of these walls together in this environment, except opening box, what should we do? That's right, we need to hold our mouse on one of them and tap and then click. Hold your mouse on one, tap, click. But this thing is exactly the opposite in mass environment. If you hold your mouse on that shape, all of them are selected. And if you want to select one of the sides, you need to hold your mouse, tap, and then click. If you want to know the reason, is that in mass environment, selecting sides together is more functional. That's why it's replaced. So if we want a piece of the shape or one of the sides of the shape to be selected, we need to hold our mouse on it and then tap. It's actually even functional to select one of them. Not that it's not functional. There are two ways. One way is to hold your mouse and then tap, or you can open a box like this from left to right so that you can select one of the sides. Now we are a bit familiar with the environment of mass, and we know that it's got some difference with the other environment. Now we want to learn how to model in mass. Let me close this and then open another page, and then we start modeling. Well, the beginning of modeling in mass is by designing a line. It's a sentence I tell my students in my Rhino class, right? The art of modeling in mass is the art of designing lines. The art of actually modeling in mass is actually the art of designing lines, because subjects are created when lines are connected to each other, right? So we need to learn how to design lines, and for beginning of designing lines, we need to pay attention to the work plane that is now activated. So for example, when I select line, you see the work plane is highlighted on its own. Let me activate this. You see that when I select the line, it's highlighted. It actually announces us that now your designs are being done in this plane. So be careful which of the work planes you are drawing your lines in levels, in reference planes, anything. So let's again design some levels, level lines. Now imagine that in level 2, I want to draw a rectangle. So how many ways can you tell me to do it? That's right. Something that makes sense is to go to level 2 and then design a rectangle, right? What's the other way? That's right. I can just design it right here in 3D environment. I select level 2, which is set when I select it, and then I can draw the shape I want, right? So one of them was drawing in level 2, the other one is setting it in level 3D. We can also do another thing. There's actually a third way, which is used less, and that's when you want to design your shape, you select which level you want to draw it in through this list. For example, when I select 4, you see 4 is highlighted and then the draw. As you see, when I select level 1 is highlighted and then I draw. Well, if you know all these methods, it's easier for you to design. Well, now we've got several shapes. Let me delete these. And now we want to turn this shape into a subject. Now, what should we do? We need to select it first and then create form. Now, Revit checks and analyzes that what forms it can design with the shape you just selected. Let's now imagine the forms that we designed in modeling in our mind. Well, we had extrusion, we had blend, we had revolve, sweep, and swept blend, right? Now let's just imagine that when we click on create form, which of these commands can be executed on this? Well, can we have revolve? No, because we need an axis for that. Can we have sweep? No, sweep needs a direction, a profile, not even swept blend, and we can't, of course, create blend either because we needed two shapes. So what's left? Extrusion, right? So as you see, when we click on it, it's automatically become like extrusion actually. Let's also remember that we don't have just one form in in creative form. There are several forms that are connected to each other. In modeling, it was just one, right? But now we've got several of them. For example, when I select this and then delete it, you won't just remove the top part, all of them are removed with it, right? But in modeling, they were all together. So when you want to change the height of this, when you select it, you don't see any parameters as height, width, or length. You don't see anything, right? So by moving each of these parts, you can change the height. For example, when you select this, here you can change this number to, for example, 13,000, right? By moving these sides, you can control the height or the dimensions in general. But in mass actually sides or shells, 3 parts of them can be selected. What's this? That's right, vertex. See, vertex can be selected, edge or segment can also be selected, and the surface, or basically the face of it, can be selected too. After you select parts of a mass, you can move it using these arrows, right? You can drag them to any direction you want. As you can see, I'm now changing the form. And all that. Let me undo. Now, except moving, we can of course select it and rotate it. As you see, we can select it and scale, right? Like that. So, what we can do is to select different parts of a mass, rotate them, scale, or even move them. If we want to move the entire form, for example, I want to move the entire form 2 meters to the other side, we can select it using a box and then move it to the other side, or we can just hold our mouse on it, tap, it selects all of it, and then move it to our desired spot. Also, remember that when I say hold your mouse on it and then automatically all of them are highlighted, it's related to lines, not the form, right? Now let's talk about these axes that appear here, right? Well, these axes are called something in each software. For example, in Max it's called pivot, and in Rhino it's called Gumball. But here it has no special name. Let's just know it as axis. We use these to move, right? Then these axes are in world direction. These are the colors that we see. For example, Z is blue. Green is, of course, X, and red is Y. For example, now pay attention to the red. What happens to the red? It becomes orange. Why? Because it's not actually no longer in the direction, in world direction. Now it's balanced with this side. Now, basically we say that it's local right now. This arrow is local because it's in the same direction of the form. So how can we put it back in the world direction? When you click on space, as you see, it switches between the local direction and the world, or basically global direction. As you can see now, the green one also became local because it's the direction of that side. Now, as you see, when I click on space, both of them will be switched to global directions. Now, sometimes it's in local directions, and we will face it in later, and we will talk about it. So, as you see, for moving vertex, edge, and surface, we use these arrows, right? Let's go for the rest of the modeling shells by saying a point. Modeling in mass, right, is done only with selected lines. For example, let's just imagine that I draw a rectangle here and another one inside it. Right? Now, I did not pay attention to an activated work plane, so when I select this, I can change it. For example, it used to be in 2, now I change it to 1 because I wanted it to be in 1. So I draw 2 rectangles. Question, if I just select the one which is outside the exterior rectangle and then I create, what happens? Nothing happens, it's modeled, right? If any of you thought that inside it would be emptied, no, it's wrong, because I said that modeling is done only with selected lines, right? But if I select both rectangles and then click on create form, what happens? Well, obviously what you expect is the first one to be emptied to create a void, but we face an error. let's just remember that this system does not does not work in mass. So what should we do if we want the one inside to be a void? It's a bit like modeling. Do you remember? What should we do? That's right, we need to use void. I just said it. So I just select it, create form, let me wireframe it to have access to the one inside. Now I select the interior one, open one here. Here we've got void form. If you remember, it was just like this in model in place. We have the same, we had actually the same techniques for void as we had in solid. So we have it right now. Let me shade it, and as you see, but it's not emptied, it's not void until the top. So how can we continue our void? We need to select the top surface of the void and then drag it up. As you see, we can drag it up. And now it's emptied. The points of void, do you remember the points of void in modeling? Yeah, one of them was that if void automatically does not, empty solid, we need to use cut, if you remember. For example, at first, I create a void inside, and then I move it a bit up. Then I select this, and then create form. And as you see, it does not do anything. What was the point? I said that you need to click on cut and 2 clicks on the 2 forms and it will happen. And the other point was that if we create a void in another place, for example this, let me tap, and then we move it to the desired spot, again nothing happens and we will have to use cut one more time, right? Another point was about void and solid. Do you remember? That's right. The fact that we could have turned void and solid to each other. I always tell you to draw, it's better to draw it in plan, it's because of this. For example, we have a circle here. Now I wanted it to be a void, but I select create form by mistake. So how can we turn it? Just select it. You just need to select one of the surfaces, not all the form. No, just one of the surfaces, and then change it to void through this part. And if it's done automatically, well, if not, you can cut it yourself, right? But let's remember a point. If a form, right, if actually a form loses a part of it using void, we cannot turn it anymore, right? Or for example, if you tap here, if you click on tap and then select the void in here, you cannot turn it into solid anymore because this void is doing something, is doing a work. Basically, the forms that have nothing to do, they're useless. They have no interactions. They have had no interactions with another form. Can be turned into of course, can be turned into solid or void. For example, this one, as you see. Well, let's continue. I select level 1 to activate it. Now, open lines can also be extruded in mats. It's one of the differences with model in place. That one we had to draw closed shapes, but now, as you see, we can have a form like this. We can, of course, select the top side and then move it up like this. For example, using this technique, we can draw a slanted wall. For example, I draw a line here, create form, it comes up. I select on the edge, drag it, and then change it to this. For example, I always insist that you should not design the body of a building using model in place. It's because of this. It's so much more difficult. Or for example, let's just imagine that we have something like this. Comes up. Now you can, for example, select them like this and then move it. You see that? We can do many things with it. Now, an interesting point. Sometimes by selecting a shape and then click on create form, you might end up having several forms or shapes. Let's just say I draw a circle and then select it and change it to create form. More than one forms are created. Can you guess what will be made? What will be created? Yes, that's right. It can create a cylinder and a sphere. So if Revit finds out that it can design several forms, as an option, we will receive it down there. It asks us which one we want. Well, the most number of options I've seen was 3, but we will talk about it. For example, I just want to design a sphere. I want to add a point for you to always remember, right? Because if you forget, you will get, angry a lot. Now, check this sphere out. For example, I want to delete it. As you see, it's got 2 pieces. I select the one at the top and I delete it. But it doesn't matter how much I click on the delete, it does not delete. And the delete icon is of course off here. So if we select the one at the top, we cannot delete it. It's also interesting to know that mirror and copy these are of course off too. So you can just move this. That's all I can do. Even if, right, you select the one at the bottom too, right? Even if you select the one at the bottom too using control, again, neither delete is on nor copy and mirror. Again, it remains like this. So, you will face this problem in different parts of mass, right? And I will mention it again. And don't think that this just happens in 2 pieces subjects, but what's the point? What is it like? Now, in order to be able to select something like this and then delete or copy or mirror, you have to select it in another way. You can't just select it like this and then hold control and select the one at the bottom. Well, you should either open a box and, as you see, delete is on again. Or you need to hold your mouse on a piece, tap, and then click. Hold, tap, and then click. Again, delete is activated, copy and other are activated, and you can do the necessary process, right? Well, what we've talked about so far has been the simulation of which of the commands? That's right, extrusion. We've talked about, or we've worked on extrusion. Now we want to go for the next technique, which is the simulation of blend in model in place. Before going for that, I can tell you that all mass can do is in blend, which connects forms to each other. What did blend do in model in place? Well, that's right, it connected 2 forms to each other. Now, you've definitely told yourself so far that mass has done nothing more than model in place. But from now on, you will see the power of mass. In mass, we can connect any number of forms we want to each other. But in modeling, we could just connect 2 forms. So, for example, I go to level 1 and I draw a rectangle. And I also said that we could do it in 3D. Let's make it a bit bigger. I don't care that much about the dimensions right now. Right now, it's not important to me. Well, it's better to always design in plan. This is the the right thing. Well, let's go to level 2. You see, level by level. Now, do we need to see where the previous or the lower shape or form was? What do we need to turn on to see that? That's right, underlay. It used to be here, but we don't have it now. So what should we do to be able to see underlay? As you can see here, it says family mass. You open it and change it to floor plan level 2. Now all the options you want will be added to this part. And as you see in underlay, we change it to level 1, right? Now, can you say the difference between the underlay we see in the environment of mass and the environment of the project? Can you tell me the difference? That's right. Underlay used to be light, the color used to be light, but now it's not light because it used to be light in actually project environment. Don't mistake it. Let me remind you something. Can you tell me the difference of underlay in mass environment and project environment? As you see, well, in mass, it's not light. The color is not light, but in project, it was a bit light, the color, and we could have noticed the difference. But here we can't. Well, as a reminder, I want to tell you 2 points about underlay. The first point is that the forms that are being shown to us as underlay cannot be selected using a box. And all you have to do is to hold your mouse on it and then click. You cannot open a box. The second point is that we had an item called select underlay elements. It was like select elements by face. Right, if this icon is inactivated, well, you cannot select these forms by even a single click. As you see, it doesn't matter how much I click, I cannot select it. But when it's activated, I can select it. So it can be a way for recognizing underlay itself, right? So I draw another rectangle, for example, this. Then I go up to level 3. We're about to change it to floor plan. Underlay shows up. Level 2 is activated. For example, I draw a rectangle here. Level 4. Underlay. I don't need to do it more than once, just once. You change it to floor plan, it's okay. Now place it here, for example. Let's check it out in 3D. That's it. Now, if, right, you select all of them, just like I did, and then click on create, see what happens? A form is given to you based on what you designed, right? Let me undo. For example, I don't like it, so I want to drag it to this direction. Again, I go up to level 3, I change it, level 4, and I'll place it here, like that. You can easily change your forms and then using create, create a new form. In Revit, forms are connected to each other only curvedly, right? If there are two, yes, the form will be straight. But if there are more than two, they will be curved. But one of you might say that, no, I want them to be straight. Well, it will be difficult because you have to connect them 2 by 2. Right, as you see, because it's a straight as long as there are 2 of them. And I don't think it's so useful. It's more logical to select them all and then create them at once together. So after creating your form, you can definitely edit it. For example, move this edge or this invertex. you can easily edit it, change it to whatever you want. In this technique, all the profiles have to be either open or closed. For example, if I draw a rectangle here and then go to level 2 and then design an arc and then go to level 3 and again design a rectangle, well, obviously it's not accepted, is it? You see that an error shows up because all of them have to be either open or closed. But if you just select 2 of these, for example, one closed and one open, well, it would be okay. But when there are 3 of them, all of them have to be open or closed. The other point is that in Blend, you cannot have forms or shapes inside each other. For example, you cannot do that, for example. You see that? Again, the point is to, create a void. But as you saw, we couldn't have done it in extrusion either. Alright, so now we want to find out if there is a way to create a void inside it. Well, I'm saying it, aren't I? It's void. But what's the technique? Well, let's go and find out the technique. I need to select these 2 first. Click on create form. Now I want to create a void. So wireframe, select these 2. And then click on void form here. Shade, and that's it. But do you know what I always do? Let me undo. Well, at first, I turn the first one, the one inside, into void. Then I turn the one outside into solid. Well, it's easier to access because when we do the first one first, we don't have access to the one which is inside. See, it's easier. Just remember something, that if we are about to use the exterior shell, we don't need to create a void in it anymore. Right? Let's just remember that if you are about to use the exterior shell, you don't need to create a void because the wall will create a cover for it, unless you want to create a wall for the interior part. Otherwise, you don't need to do that. Now, a question for you. Should all the forms be alike in Blend? For example, all of them have to be rectangle or triangle? No. But let me give you an advice. You better have the same number of sides to create a better form. Let me give you an example. For example, I draw a rectangle here. In level 3, I draw, in level 2, I draw, for example, a shape like this. Again, in level 4, I draw something else. Now, a circle. It would not be interesting because none of them have the same number of sides. As you see, select them, click on create. You see that? It doesn't give you a very good form. It doesn't have a, the rhythm is not good. So what can we do? We can use a trick for them to give us a better form. So in level 1, what we did was draw a rectangle. Rectangle has 4 sides. So what should we do for it to have 4 sides? For it to have 6 sides? So we can use a split, right? We can pick split, and then, for example, this vertex works with this one with this one, and this, for example, should split this part and this part. So this one works with this one with this, and this one with this. Let's try it. Now I split this part. You see that? Let me select these 2, create. It's not bad now, is it? No, Now let's go for the circle. We need to cut the circle too. So I pick split and I cut it, I split it like that, 6 sides, like it has 6 sides. All right, let's try it. Let's see what it becomes. Well, it makes more sense now, doesn't it? Yeah, it's a better form now. Well, obviously, by managing the places of the split, we can control the form. So if we change the split, this part which has been splitted, we can change the form. So now let's go for another example. Let me delete these. For example, I'll go to level 1, right? Draw a form with 6 sides. Let me check it. I think it should be a bit bigger. That's good. We go to level 2. Underlay is taken care of. For example, a circle is drawn. Then I go to level 3. Another circle, for example, smaller. Then I go to the next level. Turn on my underlay. Level 3. And 6 sides again. But a bit smaller. For example, that. I select these. For now, I've done nothing on them. Create, and you see what happens? Well, it's messed up, isn't it? Now, the same thing, we want to do something else on it, right? We do the split. Do you remember? So I pick split, and I split these parts. Again, to make it more accurate, I can turn on 1, and by paying attention to the vertices of that 6 sides, I can split this. Open a box, create, and you see that? Now it's a very, very good and acceptable form. Now check this out. If I select the top surface, I can rotate this. You see that? And all that. Now the edits, you will learn the editings slowly, of course. Please, I want you to practice everything we've learned so far, right? The first, forms, extrusion, this one. Now we're getting close to the end. So please do all these organizedly so that we can do the complicated projects later. So practice these, and if you've got any questions, ask us.